Okay, hey everybody, we're going to take a quick look at what Cornell Notes means. You're going to have an opportunity in this class to use the Cornell Note method. I promise it will work for you, but if you take Cornell Notes and you can show me Cornell Notes before every test, I will let you use the notes on the test and I will give you an extra 10% on whatever your test grade is. So let's take a quick look here at Cornell Notes. Cornell Notes were developed at Cornell University, and they are taught to every Ivy League freshman these days. These are the best students probably in the United States, and they're still being shown study skills. So this is a method that really works when the content becomes difficult. So let's take a look at what Cornell Notes is. But first, you might have the question, I do just fine in all my classes, so why should I learn a new note making system? And the answer is the best time to learn how to take notes is when the material is not difficult. So if you're working through a class that's pretty simple right now, and you learn how to make notes in a way that works for you and helps you process the information, you're going to have that skill down. And then when you get to the point in a class, maybe a year from now, maybe 5 years from now, where the work becomes really difficult, you're going to still be able to take very good notes. If you've never taken notes and suddenly you find yourself in a class which is extremely challenging, you have the added challenge of how do I take notes and make sense out of this difficult coursework? This is precisely the reason why the Ivy League schools teach the Cornell system as freshmen to their incoming students. As I said a moment ago, these are probably the best students in the country. And in their high schools, they probably didn't have to work very hard compared to some other students. Now they're at Ivy League schools where everybody is the best. Suddenly, the work and the quality of the work and the difficulty of the work jump sky high. And these students need to take an effective note system, and the Cornell note system works. Now you notice I used the word making. So you might ask, why do you mean note making instead of note taking? And that's an important question. We're actually making meaning out of a lecture or an article or a video or anything that you have to study. Note taking is passive. In note taking, you don't have to think. I'm sure you can all recall classes where you sat and just wrote on a paper anything the teacher wrote on the board. And in the meantime, your mind was off doing something great. Maybe you were already at sports practice in your mind or something like that. You cannot take effective Cornell notes unless you're thinking about the material and processing it. So one of the things note making does is it keeps you mentally engaged in what's going on, which again makes the note making method much more effective. Now, this is what a typical Cornell sheet looks like. You have a number of parts to this. Now, I've made these for you and I put them on the website, and you can print them out or use a fill-in form, but you can also use regular note paper. You just need to divide the note paper into the most important sections. The first section is going to be the heading. And in the heading, you want to put the course that you're currently taking, the unit of study, the date, the topic for the day. And this is because while what you're doing today may make perfect sense, in 15 weeks from now, when you have to take the final exam for this course, you want your notes to be in order. And if you've put headings on all of your notes, you'll be organized when that comes along. Now, the most important part of the note making process here is this section where we're going to put what are called telegraphic notes. So you're all too young. I'm actually too young to remember the days when telegraph messages were being sent instead of phone calls or something. But when you sent a telegraph, you paid per word, and it was very expensive. So you avoided using any unnecessary words, and you sent very short, choppy messages. That's how you want to take notes during class. You see, when you get to college, you can't ask a professor in an assembly hall of maybe 50 to 100 students, could you please repeat that, or could you slow down? The lecture has to fit in the time period that's been allotted, and so it goes on. And if you're writing out detailed, lengthy sentences, you're going to fall behind. So the trick is to just write short words and phrases, and then immediately after the class is over, and while the ideas are still fresh in your head, go back and fill in the rest of the details. So telegraphic notes is the most important part. Once class is over and you've filled in all of those extra details, you can start to think about the lesson, and you can now begin to write some cues for yourself. A cue might be a question. So if you have a fact in the telegraphic notes section, you might write a question about that fact. If you have an explanation in the telegraphic notes section, you may, in the cue section over here, you may want to write a keyword. What you can do later on is you can cover up this part of your notes, and you can go down through the cues and mentally fill in the details and check yourself against the part that you wrote over here in the telegraphic notes section. So these are not only good for class, but they're good for studying. And then finally, the last part that you want to do is you want to put a summary of that lesson. So if you can, think of the entire lesson and try to get it into maybe just one sentence, maybe two, but one sentence if you can, but not a super general sentence. You want to work the details in. So by doing this, you have to think about what is most important. So what's great about this system here is you write things down quickly as the lesson's going on, but as soon as the lesson is over, you're forced to think about it and put the details in here. Then when you come up with keywords and cues and questions, you have to think about the lesson again. And finally, when it's your job to summarize the lesson into a single sentence or two, you're forced to think about it again. You've really studied this lesson even before you start to study the lesson. So this note-taking method really works well. Now, in my class, you'll notice up here in the heading, I have lesson essential question. Many of our lessons will have an LEQ. If there is an LEQ, then you have the option down here. Instead of doing summary, you can actually answer the lesson essential question. This is what a completed example may look like. I was reading an article a few years ago and I took notes as the article went along. They're messy, but that's okay. My thought process is on here. The heading is at the top. The original title of the article is right here. I took these notes as I was writing. Now, these are a little more detailed than you might have during a lecture. When you're taking notes during an article, you can actually stop and add more details right away. I added my cues over here, and then I tried to summarize the entire lesson in a single statement at the bottom. I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a lot of work. Right now, my notes aren't that hard to do. You're right. I'm not going to lie. It is a lot of work, but it's a lot of work that works. And as I said, at some point in your life, if you are going to continue your education, you are going to get to the point where the work becomes challenging. And that's not the time to learn to take notes. Learn to take notes now, put the work in, and do it right so you won't struggle later. You know, a large number of incoming freshmen at Ivy League schools drop out of Ivy League schools and go to other schools because their first year doesn't go well for them. I don't want that to happen to any of you guys. And just to review then, so what you do in the notes column, you can record during the lecture right in this space where the red box is. Afterwards, in the cues column, you can start to write some questions or put in some keywords or something like that. You can always cover up the note-taking column and use the cues column to ask yourself questions. Try to speak aloud, recite the lesson, facts as much as you can. Take some time to reflect and ask yourself some important questions from the cues. Why is this important? Why did I put it down? What can I connect this to? And then finally, this is a good idea. Don't take notes every single day and then wait till the end of a 4-week unit and try to study everything. Every day, spend a little time with your notes from that day and maybe the previous day. And then when you get to the end of the course, you'll have already looked at your notes twice. And finally, the summary here, you don't want to just have a general summary. You don't want a TV guide. Nobody reads the TV guide anymore, but you don't want a TV guide summary. You want to work some keywords and specific details into that sentence. And that's all there is to it. Again, I have the Cornell note sheets on the website. You can print them out and fill them in with a pen. There's a PDF fill-in version that you can open on your laptop, type in your notes as you go, and then save it completed. Or you can just simply take notebook paper and divide it into a cues column, a note-taking column, draw a line across the bottom, and save that for your summary. And that's it.